What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So for one of today's horror movie reviews, we are taking a look at the film The Inheritance from 2024. Now this is just your pretty much standalone general American horror film. It's not being classified in any other subgenre that I could find. Again, it's just being classified as horror. I tried looking, thriller a little bit, but I don't know. I really didn't see it, and we'll get into that when we start getting into my thoughts of this film. But just to give you some context, so this, as I mentioned, this film came out in 2024. It stars Bob Gunton, Peyton List, and Briana Middleton. I think many of you who probably know who Bob Gunton is. He's been around in the industry for quite some time. Very well-established actor. So I think for me, seeing him in this film felt kind of like a throwaway, like, hey, I got nothing else to do. Yeah, sure, I'll star in this film. It's a small part, no big deal. Outside of that, it didn't, from my understanding, as far as the box office goes, I can't find any details as far as what it made. Now, the budget I was able to find. This film had a budget around $14 million, but again, I couldn't track down or find any confirmed box office results, so I'm not sure if this one ever made it to the box office in any capacity, whether it was limited release, select theaters, because again, this was from 2024, so this film is not that old. It released in July, and at least in my area, I don't recall seeing this film ever released, so let me know down in the comments section if this film happened to have released in your area. But again, no box office results I could find, and did not release in my area. And I live in a pretty big city, so there were no theaters. Even the big ones down to the small independent ones had this one playing at all. So, all right, so we're gonna get into this film now. From this point forward, there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen this film and it's on your list, maybe it was already on your list to see, that I would suggest step away from the video. Go give it a watch, come back and finish the video. Let us know down in the comment section what you thought. The film is not that long. It's 96 minutes long. So your typical average horror film, hour and 30 minutes, hour and 36 minutes. So anyways, from this point forward, we're going to be talking about the story in detail and a little bit of spoilers, and then I'll give my review. I'm going to keep it very high level, like I'm trying to do with movie reviews, so not as to give away too much, just in case there are some of you who in fact still want to see this film or are interested in it. You won't be fully spoiled. So I'm going to say right up front, this film felt very predictable. Right, it felt like it was something that we have seen before many times, over and over again. So we have this billionaire. I'm going to go over to my notes here, so I apologize if I'm kind of jumping around a bit. So the billionaire Charles Abernathy, I think it's how they're pronouncing the last name. It's his 75th birthday, coming up on his 75th birthday. And he invites all of his children to come back to home for this special occasion. They're all estranged as far as him between his children. Even amongst the siblings, they don't necessarily get along at all. So we have four kids. So we have the twins, CJ and Madeline, Drew, and he decides for whatever reason to bring his wife along, which does play a part in this story. And then you have the younger daughter, Cammie. Now they each have, you can tell as they are introduced to us at the very beginning of the movie, they all live very different lives. So the twins are very corporate driven, very posh, very rich, very like that mentality, right? That everyone's beneath them. Drew and his wife, so Drew is the sibling, the wife is the one that married into the family. So Drew is very much centered, doesn't really care much about being, I guess, rich. He doesn't come across himself as a snob. He comes across as a very grounded person. And then Cammie is the social influencer on social media, and you see that right from the get-go. She has her phone out. She's live on some social media platform filming everything. So very different personalities amongst the kids. So they go inside. Their father obviously is there, and he immediately questions why Hannah is there. He said he made it very, I made it very specific, just the children. And he even says to her, invites her to leave, gives her every opportunity to leave. And she makes every excuse to stay. She didn't want to miss his birthday, so on and so forth. So he then says, fine, if you're going to stay, then you're going to stay. So the broad overall story is that the father, Charles, made a deal with a demon because in the past, the family was very down their luck between various financial, collapses, schemes that they were running. So they kept losing their riches. So he had made a deal with a demon that, in order to keep all of his riches, in order to remain rich and become richer. But at his 75th birthday, he'd have to give over his soul. So the point of this film is that he invites his kids to the house, and I don't want to call him his butler, but maybe his handler, maybe his head of security is there as well. So everyone has left the house, all the maids, all the security, everyone except for this one individual who seems to be like the right hand for Charles. And one thing they've also done is they've also reinforced the house. So bulletproof glass, these, steel doors that they're going to end up closing. Almost feels like the House on Haunted Hill type situation where, hey, you got to stay in this house overnight and you'll get $1 million. The difference here is that what ends up happening, he tells the kids, hey, I need to remain alive past midnight. If I don't remain alive, none of you get anything. All my stuff, everything goes to some foundation. But if I happen to survive, then you all will get your inheritance, right? And pretty much you need to protect me. So he ends up locking himself in his study in his room, and the kids are out there trying to now stay alive. But what ends up happening is Cammie is the one that's killed first, the social influencer, while she's down in the inside pool that they have inside the house somewhere. And her body is found. And then we get this now battle where CJ and Madeline believe Drew and Hannah killed her because they want that they want all the riches for themselves. So they're end up killing CJ and Madeline. That's not how it plays out. So now they're now offing each other, so to speak. CJ ends up killing Madeline because the demon or entity takes the form of Cammie and ends up shooting his twin. Cammie, this demon, is standing in front or is possessed, looks possessed like you see here in the picture on the screen. That's Cammie. She comes towards him, and when he shoots her, the bullet just goes through because it's just a demon. It's just like a spirit, like a ghost type figure, and ends up hitting his twin, Madeline, killing her. So as the story goes on, we see this battle going back and forth between the siblings. Ultimately, what ends up happening is they find out from their dad what's going on. The dad, wanting to stay alive, ends up taking out one of his kids. I won't say which because he also realizes that his bloodline needs to end with him. So if any else, because he also then makes a side deal with the demon that if all of his kids are taken out, he'll be survived. Like they'll be the sacrifice for me. If I give you all their souls, I'll remain alive. Which he's 75 years old, so it doesn't make much sense that he would only make that deal. But the demon takes the deal. Now the demon's looking out to kill the kids as the replacement sacrifice instead of his soul when he turns 75 at midnight. So now he needs to make sure now, as his kids are not now killing each other, that once they get into his office, he needs to figure out how is he going to do it. So he ends up offing one of his kids, but come to find out his bloodline did not end with his kids. I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to spoil that fact of why his bloodline doesn't end there. There's another aspect of the story that comes up. It's very brief. We don't find about it until the end of the movie. But in a sense, that's the movie. That's the full hour and 36 minutes. And this was one of those films where the one thing I enjoyed most was the Victorian house, was the atmosphere that was created for the film. Everything else was very predictable. The jump scares were predictable. The story was predictable. You don't really get much backstory on any of the kids. The story that we do get as far as why, the father is doing what he's doing and then the kids end up turning on each other it's almost as if you're guessing along, and then you just end up figuring out what the story is, what's going to take place, right? It doesn't give backstory. It doesn't give you anything. And I know it's a horror film. I get that. A lot of horror films don't give backstories. This one seemed to just kind of just jump right into this trend we've seen of, hey, you're all locked in a house. You need to survive. There's an evil spirit, demon, monster, whatever. Now you have to figure it out, right? We saw that a couple times last year. I think over the last couple of, not last year alone, but even over the last several years, like for Ready or Not, it was all secluded into one house. Abigail, all secluded into one house, right? So I don't know if we're seeing now a subgenre create itself where we're having these stories take place in these large Victorian old school mansions, and somewhere along the line, someone has made a deal with the devil or a demon, or the house is like haunted. But that's how this one plays out, and it's again very predictable. And the way this film ends, it kind of just ends. It doesn't really indicate, okay, well, where does this now go from here as far as who survives and doesn't survive? So I'm not going to spoil that either. But as far as my rate, so that's all I'm going to give out on this one. Again, very predictable film. Only an hour and 36 minutes. Would I wish I had that hour and 36 minutes back? Yeah, I probably would have liked to have just stared at the wall a bit and just, like the plastered wall, and just counted like the little splotches on the wall where the plaster was smeared, or maybe just look up at my ceiling fan and count how many times one blade of the ceiling fan goes around in a circle for an hour and 36 minutes. That's how predictable this film was. My rating for this film is an absolute, it's going to be low. I give it a 1.5 or 2. The fact that the most appealing thing, the most enjoyable thing I found with this film was the house, was the atmosphere, was the scenes that they had created as far as the house itself. That's it. The acting was subpar. The kills were subpar. They weren't nothing great. There were things we've seen multiple times before. We've seen multiple times people getting stuck in elevators and then trying to get out. Seen all that. And even when they were dying, even when some of the siblings were killed, the other siblings who were alive, their reaction to the fact that your sibling was just killed, or the fact that a killing took place, was very mute. You would expect a bigger reaction from that, and you would expect a bigger reaction to the fact that it's also your sibling. So The Inheritance 2024, 1.5, possibly a 2. Someone would have to convince me to even go to a 2. So I'm giving it a 1.5 out of 5. However, with that said, I would still say if these are the type of films that interest you as far as centralized in one location and everyone's out for themselves and then it's just a battle of who comes out the winner, if you're into that type of horror film, then this will probably be for you. It's also one of those films that I feel is very forgettable. I won't go back and watch this again. This won't have any rewatch value for me. Like I said, I would rather just stare at the white wall and count the splotches on it from the drywall. So that's my review, my thoughts on The Inheritance. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know if you've seen the film. Do you agree, disagree with the rating? Did you rate it higher? And if you did rate it higher, let me know. I would love to know what you enjoyed about the film that you gave it a higher rating. If you haven't seen the film, I would say 2 things. I'd recommend spend the hour and 36 minutes doing something else. Or I would also say, like I've said every other time, watch it for yourself. Don't just take my opinion on the film. You might, in fact, enjoy it for yourself. It might be something that you find that does have rewatch value for you. It just didn't have it for me. So, again, let me know down in the comment section. Also, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are approaching 500 subscribers, a big milestone for the channel. And we will see you at the next one. Peace.